Okay, I meant to do this yesterday, but I got tied up with all my stuff. But ProPublica, again, love me some ProPublica, had an article about the decision called Loper Bright, or Bright, which took down the Chevron decision. Basically, if you remember, the Chevron decision in '84, basically, the Supreme Court at that time said that judges had to follow the regulations that were being sent up by federal agencies because the experts had better knowledge of the situation than judges. So when someone sued on something, a judge couldn't use their opinion to strike it down. They had to go by what the regulation was and base it on the regulation. Okay, that's what Protect Online. Because what a lot of companies were doing was like, well, they went to a judge, said it's not fair, and a judge who, counting on their political views, would strike it down and just kill the regulation. Well, the 6-3 vote of conservatives, and I understand corporations have been working for this. Crow, who owns both Alito and Clarence Thomas, all these conservatives people have been working for business about this. So with this Loper Bright decision, now it's starting. Every regulation, like when the President Biden put in about overtime, it went right to a Texas conservative court, bang, he dropped it. Medical, a lot of abortion issues, a lot of medical things, a lot of HIPAA are going to judges who have no fucking idea what the medical issue is. Bang, gone. And that's just my point about this is that we're talking about codifying Roe v. Wade. We talked about a moment ago that we need a blue Congress in order to get Kamala Harris's legislative agenda. Sorry about the word. Implemented. But here's the kicker. When she does this and it passes through, inevitably everyone's going to sue. The state of Texas will sue. Alabama will sue. Mississippi will sue. Individuals will sue about anything. And if it gets in front of these judges, quoting the Loper Bright, and the regulations come through, because if it's not specifically laid out in the legislation and left to the regular, because you'll get a plan, then they show how to regulate it. You know how it is. It's basically, if you ever, someone designs something, then they hand it to an engineer who make sure to see how the design can be implemented. That's the way the regulations do. The bullshit about Republicans in business say regulations are bad. No, they see how the law should be implemented in reality. But what this ruling did is that if it's not in the law itself specifically, then the judges can interpret it any way they see it. What the Chevron decision did in 1984 originally said, no, you have to listen to the federal agencies because the experts determined the situation. But Loper Bright has said no because this majority has decided to leave it to judges. I remember what Mitch McConnell and all those assholes said for years, Federalist Society, that they were worried. They kept saying the reason they wanted conservative judges, they wanted judges that didn't legislate from the bench or didn't give, that was their thing, that left-leaning judges were saving everything. They've done the same goddamn thing with the right. That was Mitch McConnell's one goal, was to get the Supreme Court to the right, federal judges to the right. And that's where we're at in some districts. So my biggest thing that in the post-Trump era, we still have to deal with the stench of the conservative judges on the benches who cannot be removed. And they're going to make sure that even it's a practical law, even though it makes sense, anything they can do to gum up the works, they would. And I can see them going at that, codifying Roe v. Wade and Texas suing and winning. That's a concern. So it goes back to what we have to do. We have to fix the Supreme Court by expanding the Supreme Court, get a case back in there, and go back to the Chevron decision. We can do that because they violated precedent. This thing isn't precedent. We can do this. So that's another important thing to think out when we're voting, is that if we can get a majority in Congress and Senate, get rid of the filibuster in the Senate, expand the court to 13, because there's 13 federal districts. Put four in judges that are practical, and then watch what happens. Because then we'll be on a fair playing field. Also, looking at impeaching Alito and Thomas, because those dudes are crooked, and also John Roberts and Neil Gorsuch, because there's some shit in their background we gotta know, and we know that the Congress can impeach, and I think that's another thing. But first, you expand the court. But that's my take on it. You guys have a good rest of the day, and be safe.